A country reeling from the brutalization of a 6-year-old in a Bangalore school was assaulted with shocking images from a school in rural Andhra Pradesh. Caught on camera were 3 visually impaired students being mercilessly thrashed by school staff, with the school principal literally assisting in the violence. As you watch this report, remember that this only happened to be caught on mobile camera, and one can only imagine what happens in the school outside the cameras.
The latest images to shock and numb a nation come from a tiny boarding school in Andhra Pradesh. Don't look away. Take a moment to digest this. 3 visually impaired junior school children being mercilessly beaten by the school manager and their very own principal. The 2 monsters on your screens: Greenfield Residential School Manager KV Rao and Principal Srinivas. One by one, in a tiny room, the 3 visually impaired students from Class 3 and Class 5 are caught by the throat, caned, pinned to the ground, and thrashed repeatedly without mercy. Both the brutes, whose job it is to care for and protect the students, have been arrested by the police and a case registered against them. The shocking brutality has sparked a wave of justifiable anger, unlikely to die down until the 2 sadists are punished fully and an unmistakable example set. Bureau Report, headlines today.
Absolute horror there coming from the principal. Meanwhile, startling revelations in the Bangalore rape case. The brute behind the Bangalore horror could have been caught in 2011, but for 3 years he was allowed a free run. For 3 years he had easy access to vulnerable kids by an elite school that failed to run a basic background check on him for 3 years. A school knew about this man's shady character and the threat he posed to children, but despite that, the school authorities kept quiet. This man had been caught out and fired from his last job, but the school never registered a complaint against him, never took it to the cops. Headlines today brings you startling revelations in the Bangalore rape of a 6-year-old child and the monster behind it.
Rising rage against rape of a 6-year-old in Bangalore. The anger mounting with each passing day. 24 hours after police zeroed in on Mustafa, also known as Munna, there came another startling revelation. The predator was spotted but still allowed to get away. Headlines today accessed his termination letter from another top Bangalore school. The sacking happened way back in 2011. But Dean's Academy did not report the matter to the cops and tried to insulate itself by sacking Mustafa. And this is what Mustafa was charged with by Dean's. As per its own principal, he was sacked for touching girls, that too after 3 warnings.
We have done some check about his background from some respectable people, and they have confirmed that there were some allegations against him that he used to show the video or photographs which were not in good taste to children.
Dean's is a clear violation of the law for not flagging up the matter, as reporting on matters of child sexual abuses is mandatory under the Act. The schools cannot seek exemption under any pretext.
I do not know what the earlier schools did, what kind of a thing is that. They should be told to the other people that, this is not somebody who you can hire because the person is a predator. It's a shame, our system with children, we are playing with children, we are just destroying lives of young girls.
And that's not all. The school where the 6-year-old was raped is guilty of not running the basic background checks. Soon after he was sacked from his previous school, Mustafa was employed by another elite school. He was given free access to young defenseless children, even as the school continued to make parents believe that their kids were safe away from home. With Rohini Swami in Bangalore, Bureau Report, Headlines Today.
Joining us on centre stage tonight, Amita Wattal, principal of Springdale School in Delhi, one of the best-known principals in the capital. Also with us, Dr. Jitendra Nagpal, senior consultant psychiatry and child health psychology at Moolchand MedCity. Nivedit Alva, spokesperson for the Karnataka Pradesh Youth Congress, but here in his capacity as a TV producer. Naveen Chugh, senior vice president and managing director of First Advantage. And this is a company that runs background checks on employees. Yep. And I want to go across first Naveen Chugh, because what we've seen in this instance is a principal from a very well-known school once again come out and say that this same person, Mustafa or Munna, was caught doing exactly the same horrible things in 2011, and at that point in time no complaint was filed against him. He wasn't reported to the cops, and this man was allowed to go scot-free, and he takes up a new job. Now you try and do background checks on different classes of employees. What's the response you get from schools when you suggest to schools, Mr. Chugh, that they must run such background checks?
Yeah, Rahul, first of all, I think it's suffice to say that it's a very sad thing which happened. It's a heinous act of sorts. But I think, the background checks, there is a basic lack of awareness. And when we approach schools or many of the other employers, I think many of them don't even understand what it means, what are the benefits, why should it be done. And so there is a basic lack of awareness, and then sometimes when it comes to the cost, I think people shy away from both the intent and the investment.
And that's not acceptable, Amita Wattal, because what action do you believe needs to be taken first against Shanti Menon, the principal of Dean School in Whitefield, who found out this person, sacked him instead of reporting him to the cops, because the new guidelines, the POXCO guidelines clearly say that you need to report any such crime immediately. Instead of doing so, you just sack this employee and let the predator enter into another school. It's completely unacceptable, Ms. Wattal.
Firstly, it's with great despair that I'm hearing this awful, terrible story about the poor child, not only in Bangalore but also in Andhra Pradesh. I would like to say that yes, schools in this one-upmanship of trying to have so many activities going are not really looking at verification of auxiliary staff. When you have a complete staff which is subject staff, you verify, but when it comes to auxiliary staff, you do not verify. And I think many of our acts, whether it's the POXO Act, whether it's corporal punishment, it's not coming into place. The laws are so diluted, people are not taking cognizance of it, principals are not even aware of these acts which are there in place. And I think it's a heinous crime if a person in the authority who's looking after a school and who's the head of school has just let the person go like this and not brought it up to the police. I think it is a terrible tragedy that something like this has happened. I also believe that this obsession, because across the board we need thousands and thousands of teachers, because schools are coming up like mushroom, because of the hunger for education. What we are finding is that people are just hiring teachers left, right and center, as long as they can fill spaces in the school without verifying.
That's not acceptable. Nivedit Alva in fact tweeted to say that there are other schools in Bangalore where similar cases were reported but were hushed up because schools are worried about the impact on their brand image. Parents are put under pressure because they don't want their children to be turfed out of that prestigious school. So this is just the case that's come to light, Nivedit. There are possibly, like you reported, one instance where something similar happened was hushed up.
Yeah, Rahul, first of all, I mean, more than anything else, I'm here today as a parent of a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old. And you can't even imagine what it is. I mean, first parents wait to get their children into school. Then you pay all these fees, and now if you can't win rest assured when your child is in school, I mean there is something terribly, terribly wrong with our system, and it needs to be set right immediately. And the thing is that time and time again these issues come up, problems happen, and it just gets hushed up. There was an incident a couple of years ago in another school in Bangalore, Trio, which had hired a principal from the UK. They had not been checked any of his. It turned out later on that all his degrees were fake. He was caught doing funny things in school, and then the case just disappeared. The person apparently was asked to leave the country. And what happened? The school starts again, just pretends nothing happened, and moves on. The thing is that unless we really go after schools and we make examples that you cannot take things for granted, that it's not okay just to hush up things and to try and brush them under the carpet, we are not going to learn. We've all seen in the last 1 year what exactly it took in Delhi for everyone to wake up. And these are children. This is not, I mean, I don't want to sit at home and have a conversation with my 7-year-old about what rape is, about how she should not trust anybody, about how she should stay away from everyone. I mean, this is what we are being reduced to today. And we really need to wake up as parents, as Indians, as human beings, to be able to put a stop to this and to really find a way out of this mess.
Is taking action against the school the right way to go? Because as per the POXCO guidelines, even Dean School Whitefield has urged Dr. Nagpal, explain what these guidelines are and why is it that you feel that the schools are not bothering to follow what is a law passed by Indian Parliament?
Rahul, see, first of all, I think besides being a national tragedy, I think this is a national shame. The paradox of our education today is the right to education invokes the idea that 6 to 14 years should be in schools, and we hear a 6-year-old at the entry point of a judicious system which allows child-friendly schooling becoming a victim of rape and child sexual violation. I think it's a barbaric, brutish act which I think there's no point in getting international recognition for school when these are becoming dens of sexual right violations and child rights. So that's my personal viewpoint. I think schools need to understand that protecting children, safeguarding their interests.
So what action should be taken, you think, against both these schools for not doing, in the first instance, for allowing a known predator to get away without filing a complaint, and in the second instance, for not doing a background check?
Rahul, the POXO Act has most appropriate guidelines for any action to be taken against any caretaker, including the school principals and the management. But as Mrs. Wattle said rightly, I think the tragedy is that the POXO Act is not being implemented in the right spirit within the school.
No, but Dr. Wattle, what's the point of having acts which don't get followed? What's the point of having it's not even a guideline, it's a law. Do you feel that action should be taken against this school? There are some demands being made that the school itself should be shut down, or action should be taken against its senior management. Now, shutting down a school is tough because there's so many other children, so many other parents who will get impacted. What do you do to send a message which ensures that other schools are not as callous? Mr. Chuk spoke of how they were trying to save money. This is not acceptable. Safety cannot be compromised with. How do we send that message to schools, Ms. Wattle?
Are you speaking to me, Rahul?
Yes, I am, ma'am.
I'm afraid I couldn't get the last part. Could you just repeat it quickly?
My question simply is this: how do we ensure that schools do not try and scrounge on money, don't try and avoid these background checks, and follow all that has been written out in law? These are parliament mandated laws. It's not a guideline which the schools can either choose to follow. It's not an advisory. It's a law. It needs to be followed and implemented. And if it's not being followed, what action must be taken?
No, I think firstly the Directorate of Education of any state has to come in a very big way. Schools have to be monitored. The very fact that they're given affiliations to any boards, it has to be looked on very carefully, and certainly very strict action has to be taken. You can't really close down a school for the simple reason that you will be jeopardizing the lives of 2,000, 3,000 students, but certainly a great deal of criminal action should be taken against the management of the schools for what is going on with them.
No, because what we've seen, Nivedit Alva, is that the government has shunted around the police commissioner, a man who is reputed to be an honest person, but so far no action has been taken against the school authorities. The school management is still roaming scot-free. How do you send a signal, a message to these schools, both the Dean's Academy and the other school, to ensure that a message goes out that this is not acceptable, you can't get away with this?
Rahul, I mean, on the arrests and the thing, I think, I mean, you all have been discussing it the whole day on television, and as you've seen, the law is taking its course. But the point, I mean, I think we are here today, all of us, to discuss a much larger issue as to what the future is and how you put an end to this, right? And when I say action should be taken, I mean, I agree completely that you can't just shut a school down. It puts hundreds of parents, hundreds of children out, right? But I'm saying the thing is, I mean, why don't we have a national database of teachers, right? They have to take
let me
exams.
ask you a
Every
direct
school has
question.
to
Do you
register
believe
with
the
CBSE
school management is
or
culpable?
ICSE?
Do you think the school management is culpable in this case for failing to run background checks,
I
for
100%
not
think
keeping a
obviously.
close
I
eye
100
on Mustafa?
Sorry, Rahul, is that to me?
Yes, it is, Nivedit.
Yes, 100% the school management is completely to blame. I mean, you cannot just kick somebody out. The previous school kicked somebody out because he touched someone 3 times. The action should have been taken the first time he touched someone, right? And the police should have been informed. This would never have happened had they done what they were supposed to do. Second of all, even when this horrendous, I mean, atrocious, completely sick incident happens, the management first tried to brush it aside. They first tried to, I mean, you know, just make it go away. And when it didn't, and when everything hit the ceiling, that's when, I mean, they're woken up and they're trying to do stuff. So you cannot, this is where you know something has happened and you are trying to, and that's what, in fact, all the parents who were interviewed by your channel today, across the day, have been saying that they should have called us in, they should have told us, they should have gotten together with us, we should have spoken about this, seen what we need to do. But instead, what blew everyone's top was when they tried to brush it away. And the point I'm trying to make about schools being held responsible is that exactly what was discussed earlier today. Schools are mushrooming. There are, I mean, everyone's hiring anyone. People move from one school to the other. I mean, unless either the law is there, the POSCO Act is there, but I think there need to be some more checks and balances put in. Like I said, a national database of teachers so that you know where they're coming from. Maybe schools need to set up on their websites a biodata of all the teachers, so you know where they've been, why they left, where they left, how long they were there. I mean, why not?
No, I don't agree at all, because none of this matters, Dr. Nak. You can have any number of laws. Nivedit is asking for a database. You can have any number of databases. It means nothing till such cases are reported and acted on. Now, if Dean Academy catches a person, this would not be in his database. It will go unreported because they didn't even report it to the cops. People have to do their jobs. Teachers and principals have to do their jobs.
See, first and the foremost, I think the strengthening of the implementation of the POXO Act. The POXO Act, when it was made by the Ministry of Women and Child Development, it was meant to be taken across to the schools, and the principal and the hierarchy of all the teaching and the non-teaching staff needs to be completely sensitized and oriented to the nature of violation as far as the protection of child rights is concerned. I'm sure majority of the schools do not take cognizance of this act as something which is a legal instrument, and anything under the legal instrument that is in the safeguarding the interest of the child and child's happiness per se, and this is the most heinous act that we have heard in the context of the POXO Act. So the immediate approach should have been the reporting of the case, which has not been done.
But Naveen Chog, even if the school had run a background check, that doesn't really yield very much unless the previous school, which in this case was Dean Academy, actually reported this matter. Because if you just terminate somebody's services because you don't want media attention, you don't want to give your school a bad name, none of this comes to light. Unless the school truthfully and faithfully reports the complaint or the action that's been taken,
Absolutely.
no database, no law has any meaning.
Yeah, Rahul, there are laws which are there, but I think at the end of the day, there is a social and moral obligation to, it's about the basic risk and basic security and safety of the kids and even beyond that, the citizens. Now, in this instance, for example, and likewise in many other cases when the background checks are done, one of the checks is to go back and check with the previous employer. Now, whether they reported, that's good, because, when you compare it to some of the laws in the other countries, for example, in the US, you have a national sex offenders list. Things are reported, whether they are caught in the media or even after they are, convicted, if you will. But in this instance, even if the background check was done, there is a likelihood. And now the other aspect of the background checks, when people do actually realize the value and the benefits, is it serves as a huge deterrent. I mean, when people know that there is going to be a check, they are less likely to use or indulge in some activities, or if they have,
these
then
are
they
sick
likely to
minds.
find
I'm sorry,
other
I don't
places of
agree.
employment.
Just because there's a background check doesn't mean that you can keep a pedophile away from his sick games. Now, you need to ensure that such matters are reported, Dr. Nagpal, and these people are sent to custody immediately. They're acted against.
I'd like to interrupt here. This is not a case of sexual advances, inappropriate sexual advances on a child. This is a case of APSA, which is aggravated penetrative sexual assault, as reported in the newspapers. And if this is true as per the medical examination, I think this is the most heinous form of a crime under the POCSO Act, the aggravated child sexual abuse. And this should have been immediately brought into the custody, reported by the school, and the necessary action taken by the police and the law. This is absolute negligence of the POCSO Act.
One thing is very clear, that for far too long, private schools especially have worried far too much about their brands, about their reputation, about their image, thereby trying to brush such matters under the carpet. This is completely unacceptable. In the first instance, Dean Academy should really have reported Mustafa to the cops and ensured that he was jailed and not allowed to take another employment. And in the second instance, the school, we're not naming it just for the reason that we don't want to reveal the identity of the student in any way and do anything which leads to the identity of the student being revealed. In the second instance, the school, the highly prestigious school in Bangalore, should really not be trying to save money and running proper, detailed background checks. And if such a case comes to light, not try and brush it under the carpet, but go to the cops and ensure that the guilty are punished. And now that didn't happen, stringent action needs to be taken against the managements of the school. Shutting down the school is not the right way to go. Stringent action needs to be taken against the managements of the school. So schools across the country realize they cannot play with the lives and safety of our children. For the time being, Naveen Chugh, Amita Vatal, Nivedita Alva and Dr. Nagpal for joining us on Center Stage tonight. Thank you very much.